After creating a jelly print portrait of my daughter, I wanted to create one of my son in a slightly different style with similar goals for the project in the end. Instead of creating a more realistic style, I wanted more of a graphic style with thicker, bolder outlines. I printed out a picture about the size of my round jelly plate. I laid my jelly plate on top, and I was able to see most of the details through my very dirty and heavily used jelly plate. I used a black paint pen to trace around the outline of his face. I did have some issues with the paint pen beading up a little bit. I let it dry, went back with another layer, and I got a much more solid line the second time. Someone did tell me in a comment that if you use satin acrylic medium, I think that's what it is, don't quote me on that, and I need to test this out first. If you paint that on the jelly plate first, let it dry, and then go on top with paint pen lines, they're really clean and clear. I'm going to try that and I will post back. Once my paint pen layer was dry, I went in with paint. And again, I wanted to mix realistic skin tone. Really, the purpose of the project is to create a new way to teach skin tone to students, taking the pressure off of creating very realistic portraits because they're allowed to trace them through the jelly plate. And instead, the focus is on creating realistic skin tone, getting those values and highlights put in. I did a much better job mixing up his skin tone than I did with my daughter. I picked a much better picture with more value changes and more interesting color in his skin. Again, my daughter's face was way more washed out, so this was overall more successful. I painted in all my details, let the paint layer dry, and then I added a pickup layer over the whole thing. This pickup layer adheres to all of the layers that I've put down on my jelly plate. You create that one solid layer, and then you add your paper on top while the paint is still wet. You let all of those layers dry. I recommend doing it overnight. And what happens is all of those layers stick together and then they stick to the paper so you're able to pull it cleanly off of the jelly plate. Overall, I think this was more successful than my daughter. I still went in with colored pencil. I wanted to tone down certain areas. I had certain lines I wanted to change and shift slightly. I also added a lot more shadow details, again, pushing that graphic style. I took a thin felt tip pen and I went in with hatching and cross hatch lines, just again to push that graphic style. I added some color pencil on top to push the highlights a little bit more. I added the plaid details in his shirt. I was a little intimidated doing that on the jelly plate, so I decided to go with a solid blue on his shirt, and then I added that pattern in using paint pens. I really like the two styles of portraits. I think they were both successful in some ways, not successful in others. I learned a lot through the process, and I will say it over and over and over again. If you are an art teacher, you must create a project example before you teach a project. This is my project example. I had to do 2 of them because I wanted to test out 2 different styles before I even start putting my lesson together. If portraits intimidate you, try this with your jelly plate. Portraits truly intimidate me. They're my least favorite thing to do, but it felt way more accessible doing it this way. If you give it a try, let me know how it goes, and happy art making.